The FBI released pictures of Charlie Kirk's shooter, and guess what? His own parents looked at the TV and realized it was their son. Not only that, the rifle in the photos looked exactly like the one his grandfather had given him. What happened next will shock you. From emotional family confrontations to secret text messages and even hidden notes left behind. And trust me, you won't believe how this massive manhunt ended, peacefully, inside a sheriff's office. When the FBI released pictures of the suspect connected to Charlie Kirk's assassination, millions of people across the country were staring at their screens, trying to make sense of the blurry images. In St. George, Utah, one mother felt her heart sink. She looked at the photo carefully, hoping she was wrong, but deep down she couldn't shake the feeling. The face, the hair, even the way the suspect stood. It all looked way too familiar. It looked like her own son, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. At first, she told herself she might be overthinking it. It's normal for people to see resemblances when news spreads this fast. But the longer she stared at the picture, the more convinced she became. Eventually, she showed the image to her husband, maybe hoping he would dismiss her fear. But instead, he paused, studied it, and quietly admitted that he saw it too. Both parents were shaken. It's one thing to see someone else's child on the news, but to think your own son could be involved in something this devastating? It was unbearable. The situation grew even heavier when investigators released more details, including the type of weapon believed to be used in the shooting. The rifle looked eerily similar to one Tyler had been gifted by his grandfather. This wasn't just a random gun anyone could own. It had a unique design. His father, already nervous, decided to ask Tyler directly. He told him to send a photo of the rifle, wanting to confirm that it was still in Tyler's possession. If Tyler had it, then maybe this whole nightmare could be ruled out. But instead of answering, Tyler avoided the request. Court documents later revealed that he texted his roommate about the situation, saying, "My dad wants photos of the rifle. He's calling me right now, but I'm not answering." That short message showed just how serious things were. Tyler knew his father was suspicious, but he chose silence instead of honesty. When Tyler finally came home to face his parents, the atmosphere was heavy and emotional. This wasn't just a normal family argument. It felt like the entire weight of the nation's attention had suddenly crashed into their living room. According to court documents, Tyler broke down in front of his parents. He admitted he couldn't go to jail and confessed that he was thinking about ending his life instead. For his parents, hearing these words was heartbreaking. They weren't only worried about the crime he might have committed, they were terrified of losing their son in a different way. In that moment, they were no longer just parents of a suspect. They were parents clinging to their child, trying to stop him from making a decision he couldn't take back. His parents, torn between grief and confusion, asked him the obvious question: why? Why would he do something like this? Why take the life of someone in such a public and violent way? Tyler's response was simple but loaded with meaning. He said, "There is too much evil, and the guy spreads too much hate." Those words, raw and emotional, gave a glimpse into what was going through his mind. This was not a calm, thought-out explanation. It was the voice of a young man overwhelmed by his beliefs and emotions. Over the past year, according to his family, Tyler had started leaning toward more progressive political views. He became outspoken about LGBTQ+ rights, something that clashed directly with many of Kirk's views. His relationship with a transgender partner also played a big role in shaping his perspective. To him, Kirk wasn't just another political figure. He represented everything Tyler felt was harmful to people he cared about. That emotional clash between personal life and public politics likely built up inside him over time. In his mind, he saw Kirk as someone spreading negativity, and he convinced himself that taking action was the only way to fight back. But saying those words out loud in front of his parents made the weight of it all real. When Tyler Robinson's parents realized the situation was spiraling out of control, they knew they couldn't handle it on their own. Their son was emotional, talking about ending his life. and they feared that calling the police directly might push him over the edge. That's when they decided to reach out to someone they both trusted deeply, a longtime family friend who also happened to be a retired law enforcement officer. On one hand, he had the experience of working with the police and knew how serious the crime was. On the other, he cared about the family and about Tyler as a person. He was someone who could help bridge the gap between the family and the authorities without escalating things. When the parents explained everything, this friend immediately realized the weight of what was happening. He didn't brush it off, and he didn't panic. Instead, he picked up the phone and contacted Washington County Sheriff Nate Brooksby, who had been following the case closely. Later in a press conference, Sheriff Brooksby shared his reaction. He said his first thought when he got the call was, "Who died?" Because the voice of his old friend was shaking, but then came the words he never expected to hear. "I know who Charlie Kirk's shooter is." Those words stunned him. This wasn't a random tip from a stranger. It was coming from someone he had worked with for years and trusted with his life. That trust was crucial. Brooksby didn't doubt it for a second. Instead of waiting for more proof or questioning it endlessly, he immediately took action. He called Utah County Sheriff Mike Smith, who was leading the investigation into Kirk's assassination, and told him the news directly. At first, Sheriff Smith could hardly believe what he was hearing. The case had turned into an international story, with law enforcement agencies pouring resources into the manhunt. And now, suddenly, another sheriff was telling him that the suspect was sitting in his own county and might even be willing to surrender. Brooksby said he had to repeat himself because the information was so shocking. With the connection made, everything moved quickly. Plans were put in place to bring Tyler in safely. The retired law enforcement friend agreed to help mediate the process, acting almost like a middleman to keep things calm. By 8 p.m. that evening, the unbelievable happened. Tyler Robinson, who had been the focus of the nation's most intense search for over 30 hours, walked into the sheriff's office with his parents and the family friend. There was no SWAT raid, no gunfire, no dramatic chase. The manhunt that had captured the attention of millions ended quietly because a family chose honesty, a friend stepped up, and law enforcement trusted the process. When Tyler Robinson finally walked into the Washington County Sheriff's Office, the mood inside could have gone one of two ways. On one hand, police were face to face with the man accused of assassinating one of the most prominent political figures in the country. On the other hand, he was surrounded by his parents and a trusted family friend, clearly scared and unstable. How they handled this situation would make all the difference. Sheriff Nate Brooksby later explained that the number one goal was clear: make sure Tyler surrendered peacefully and stayed alive. They knew that forcing him into a corner or treating him harshly might trigger violence. Instead, they chose a calmer, more human approach. Rather than handcuffing him immediately or putting him in an interrogation room, officers placed Tyler on a couch in a quiet room. He was not restrained. His parents sat with him the whole time, and officers offered him water. The goal was to make the environment feel as non-threatening as possible. To some people, this approach looked strange. After all, this was a man accused of killing someone at a public event. Many critics argued that someone accused of such a crime should have been treated with maximum force and zero comfort. But Brooksby defended the decision. He explained that the choice wasn't about showing leniency, it was about ensuring safety. He put it simply: if at the end of the day we accomplish him surrendering peacefully on his own, I'm going to make some concessions to make that happen. In other words, the priority was preventing another tragedy. Using an aggressive or stormtrooper style could have led to chaos, but keeping things calm gave them control over the situation. When investigators dug into Tyler Robinson's personal life, one of the biggest breakthroughs came from his text messages. Court documents later revealed that shortly after the shooting, Tyler was messaging his partner. These weren't random conversations, they were confessions. In those texts, Tyler admitted what he had done, and those words became some of the most important evidence in the entire case. One of the first shocking lines came when he simply wrote, I'm sorry. He was answering the question of whether he was the shooter. This wasn't a guess, this wasn't an assumption. He openly admitted it. He also revealed that the shooting wasn't some last-minute decision. He had been planning it for over a week. That detail alone showed investigators that it wasn't an act of impulse, but something he thought about, prepared for, and executed. The text also showed a very different side of him, a mix of guilt, fear, and regret. At one point, he told his partner, "To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you." This line made it clear that Tyler never wanted his partner to be dragged into the situation. He wanted to hide what he did, but at the same time, he couldn't stop himself from confessing to the person closest to him. He even left behind a written note under a keyboard at his home, where he stated, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." For prosecutors, that note, combined with the text, showed clear intent. It wasn't random, it was planned and deliberate. But the messages didn't stop at confessions. Tyler also tried to control the situation by urging his partner to delete texts and avoid the police. He told them not to speak to investigators and to stay silent if questioned. In other words, he was trying to cover his tracks, even as he admitted what he had done. Another crucial part of the investigation centered on the weapon itself. The rifle that killed Charlie Kirk wasn't just any gun, it had a history. It was a bolt-action rifle that once belonged to Tyler Robinson's grandfather. That detail immediately connected it to him, and investigators quickly began piecing together evidence around it. When forensics teams recovered the rifle, they didn't just stop at the surface. They tested it for DNA and fingerprints, and the results were clear. DNA found on the trigger matched Tyler Robinson. That physical link between him and the rifle gave prosecutors one of their strongest pieces of evidence. It wasn't just a theory that he used the weapon, it was scientifically proven. Investigators also found spent shell casings. These weren't ordinary casings either. They had unique engravings that matched other casings found at Tyler's home. That meant whoever fired the rifle at the scene had also fired similar shots before, during practice. The markings lined up perfectly, tying the weapon directly back to him. Experts explained that the rifle was equipped with a high-precision scope, which made it capable of long-distance accuracy. The shot that killed Kirk came from more than 130 meters away, a distance that would be nearly impossible without specialized equipment and at least some knowledge of shooting. This wasn't random firing. It was calculated and targeted. Even more disturbing were some of Tyler's texts about the weapon. He had mentioned engraving bullets, almost like he wanted to leave behind a signature or a symbolic mark. Investigators didn't confirm whether the bullet that killed Kirk had engravings, but the fact that Tyler talked about it showed he put unusual thought into his ammunition. It raised chilling questions about whether he wanted his attack to be remembered in a specific way. At his home, police also found targets with bullet holes, suggesting he had practiced using the rifle. That practice, combined with the scope and the unique shell casings, painted a clear picture. He didn't just own the rifle, he prepared with it. Forensic evidence often speaks louder than words. People can deny accusations, but physical traces, DNA, ballistics, engravings, don't lie. In this case, the rifle became the undeniable link between Tyler Robinson and the shooting. If you thought this breakdown was wild, wait until you see what's coming next on this channel. Make sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next shocking story.